Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday Football Show with myself and Mike DeCourcy. Tim Benz with you from Breakfast Benz and Trib Live. And, of course, Fox Sports Pittsburgh 970. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Fox Sports, and the Big Ten Network as well. Off last week in advance of the bye for the Steelers. We're back this week. The Browns in town. Go to Mike's Beer Bar. That's our sponsor for the Friday Football Show and the pregame show podcast. You got a fantastic lineup of fall beers, harvest beers, pumpkin beers. That's your place to go in advance of Steelers-Browns on the North Shore, just a stone's throw from PNC Park. Nothing's happening at PNC Park in October, as is normally the case, but it is going on at Acrisure Stadium. So go check out the game as the Steelers come back from Ireland after a bye week and get divisional play started. Mike, good to see you. You went in your usual black. You're often in black. I'm wearing, I got an odd mismatch here of Steelers and Mahler's gear. Excuse me, Syracuse and Mahler's gear. Well, it's not that odd, honestly, now that I say that, because much like the Mahlers, Syracuse also disappeared for a couple decades before making a mediocre return. But, yeah, we're ready to go here. So let's start off, as we always do, our view from Mount Washington, our 30,000-foot big picture view, our state of the Steelers heading into game day against the Browns. And Mike Tomlin says that he is not a big picture guy, Mike, which that got a chuckle out of the Pittsburgh media because I think Mike likes to selectively think of himself as a big picture guy. When it warrants that he wants to be a big picture guy, he's a big picture guy. When he can't look beyond the next game or the next week or the next play, then he doesn't want to be known as a big picture guy. So I think he selectively applies when he wants that tag thrown onto him. But he's claiming he's not going to be a big picture guy. I'm claiming otherwise. I think we got to look big picture, at least at the next 2 weeks, if not where the Steelers sit right now in totality with this AFC. I've got some numbers. I've got some stats that'll drop in here and there throughout the course of the next hour here on this show about where the AFC really is, where the Steelers really are in it. But if you beat the two Ohio teams in a very wounded AFC North over these next 10 days. And I don't think it's entirely wrong. If you don't want to go big picture like the next 13 weeks, Coach T, you can go the next 10 days because you got two wounded teams with quarterback issues. You're playing one of them at home. You're getting one of them at a real good time. I know it's a Thursday divisional game. The Steelers suck in those situations on the road. Win these two games and you're 5-1 to start with Aaron Rodgers. My big question about Aaron Rodgers coming in was he ever going to give you the 6-1 pop that Russ Wilson did when he first got in under center after taking over for Justin Fields? For as much as we crap all over the end of the Russell Wilson era here, he won 6 of his first 7 games. I didn't know if the Steelers were ever going to be good enough to win 6 of 7. You at least win 5 of 6 in the division in which it's currently constructed right now. That might be just as good, Mike. So I am looking big picture at this, at least the next 2 weeks of a big picture, because I do know Russ went 0-5, and I kept hearing that Aaron Rodgers would never let that happen. Okay, but we also needed a stretch where he was about 6 of 7 then. I'll take 5 of 6.
So I'm kind of with Mike on this, sort of, in the sense of that I have seen the reaction, especially since there wasn't anything to do but react for the last 2 weeks, now 12 days, because there wasn't any football game on Sunday. And there were football games that did not involve the Steelers that played out exactly as the Steelers would have wanted. And so it changed the narrative to, what do you think? To, oh my goodness, they should win the league. They should win the division. How could they not? Well, it's you're getting those who are doing this, and I'm not accusing you, Tim, but those who are doing this, and they are many, are getting way too far ahead of things. The way I look at it is there is a full season to play. And the way I explain that is that a lot of Steelers fans love to live in the 70s. And in the 70s, 74, 75, 76, 3 great teams, they only played 14 games. There are 13 games left for these Steelers to play. So I don't want to hear about if they don't win the division, ... Come on. Let's not forget how the Ravens got here. We hope that the Steelers don't go through what the Ravens are going through, but you can't know in week 5, week 6, whether or not that's out there for you. So you do just have to take care of what's in front of you for starters. And I will disagree to an extent with your characterization of two wounded teams. Hey, if they were playing the Ravens and the Bengals next two games, you'd be 100% right. But the Browns are not wounded. The Browns just didn't have a quarterback.
I think
and now
by their own ineptitude at the position.
Yeah, I mean, they have one now? I don't know, maybe, sort of, kind of, maybe not. I mean, it's somewhere in there, and we'll find out. But they have a tremendous defense, not just good. They are really special. You say to yourself when you look at that defense, well, we can't really block the defensive line that well because they're great. So we'll attack the secondary. Well, they're great. So what do you attack? We'll get into it, but this is not an easy game. And the Steelers are in great shape relative to where they could be. But they played one good game, Tim. Let's not forget that. They played once where they were good in all phases, where there was very little to quibble about except one particular play where they broke down that we never got to discuss. That one breakdown made it somewhat competitive, very competitive at the end. But they've only played one good game, and they're fortunate to be 3-1.
Oh, I agree with you about the Steelers' shortcomings. I'm just saying that if they are going to have a chance to win the division, they got to take advantage of it now. And, you know, I'm aware of it. I know the Ravens came back last year. The Ravens were 8-5 going in their bye. They had just lost. The Steelers were 10-3. There was a 2-game lead. And time was running out in the season for Baltimore to get back in the divisional race. And there's, like you said, 13 weeks left here, and Lamar's not going to be out for all of them. I mean, Lamar should come back from this. So it's not like he's out for most of the year or all the years Joe Burrow is to make that comp again to the Bengals. I get all that. But if they are going to win the division, likely it's going to be by what they pad and build up now. And, you know, I just don't want to see themselves – they can put themselves in a very comfortable position with that as opposed to like we saw in 2023 – when they were in good shape, real good shape at 7-4, had the easiest stretch of their schedule the whole season coming up and lost 3 games in a row. Like that's
what you have to learn the lesson from, though, Tim, because
that's why I'm not guaranteeing it's going to happen. I'm forewarning. I'm saying, like, do the opposite now. Do better than what you did then.
Well, it's a great idea, but the whole problem is that if you think about that particular season, they were in great shape. Then they blew the Arizona and New England games, and it was like over. And then all of a sudden, Mason came in, and on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve or whatever it was, he obliterates the Bengals, wins a couple more, and now they're in it. So it's really hard to say to yourself, if you don't do this, that won't happen, or if you do this, that will happen. I can agree with you to the extent that if they are able to win the next two, it will be a significant challenge for Baltimore or the Bengals or anyone else to come back on them. But until you're in week 10, 11, 12, it's really hard to start doing magic numbers and such.
All right, well, we want folks to comment. Steelers fans, put your comments in, and we'll get to some. I've already got a bunch ready to go, and we'll get to them at the end of the Friday football show. You can comment on YouTube. You can comment on Facebook. They all go up the same way, and we'll get to them as the show goes along. But tell you what, Mike, I'll meet you in the middle. And when we get to our keys to victory right now, I'll start offensively and talk about some of the things that you are forewarning about with the offense. When you talk about they've only played one really good game yet, I agree with you. And here are some numbers. I could have saved this for the stat pack later on in the show, but I'll just give them to you right now. Here are some numbers. 30, 27, and 31. That's where they are in total offense after last night. Passing the ball, 27. 31st in the league in running the ball, 30th in total offense at 263.5 after the Eagles. Oof, wow, what was that? But they still actually had to put up some yards on the board to try to scramble back with a multi-touchdown deficit. So that pushed them in front of the Steelers. I don't know what's going on in Philly. By the way, hello to all of our friends in Philadelphia. Hope you're having a wonderful morning after what happened with the Phillies and that debacle at the end of the game. The Eagles, that debacle for 3.5 hours. And even the Flyers lost already to the Florida Panthers. So enjoy yourself, Philadelphia. I'm sure it's a wonderful day.
So everybody in Philly now is a Union fan because they won the Supporter Shield for the best record of Major League Soccer, and that's what they've got. So get on the train, the Union train, Philly fans, because that's rolling. Everything else is really struggling.
So anyway, like that's my key to victory is offensively, if you're going to go vertical, you have to find ways to hit big plays on the ground or catch and run with DK or maybe a tight end. If you're not going to go vertical, then you've got to find ways around the inability to do so. I think they got to try more vertical shots. If they can't, then they got to go that route. Try to get it to DK because that's been effective when they've noticed it, when they've been able to get it to him, like twice against the Jets, once last time out against Minnesota, the tune of 80 yards and a touchdown. And kind of the same thing to Jalen Warren on the 62-yarder at home against the Seahawks in the game that they lost. Got to get the tight ends involved. They've been invisible, especially since they deploy them so much. But, like, I want to – you said something I think needs to be amplified, Mike, when you're talking about, well, can't run it because the defense for the Browns is really good at stopping the run. Can't throw it because the secondary is really good, even though they made a change in the secondary. The Steelers have to get away from that. They have to stop looking at their own offense and saying, we can't do X, so we're not going to try. Because it's really, really hard to be good 11, 12 plays in a row. That's why they are what they are statistically. They're 3-1. They score a decent amount of points. They're like dead middle in the league when it comes to point production. They're average when it comes to point production. They're way below in every other yardage stat because it's hard to do. And they just happen to be proficient in the red zone, which gets them their points, but they got to get more chunk plays. They just have to. And I think it really comes down to anytime you get a chance to throw the ball short to DK because you got to look where he can run long, do that. Because if you're spooked off every time you see cover two and the explanation is, that's cover two, can't throw deep. Or the explanation is, we can't pass protect, so we don't want to expose Aaron. Okay, then you get 31st in the league in the run, 29th in the pass, and 27th overall, or whatever the jumbled numbers I just gave. But they're all 25th or below in every major offensive stat.
But remember, they did what you're asking in that last game. I sat here 2 weeks ago. It seems like a lot longer than that, but 2 weeks ago and begged the Steelers to throw the ball on quick drops over the middle. Now, I will acknowledge that in my scenario, it was doing that to Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith mostly. Do it to the tight ends. They didn't play those guys for a lot of the game. They went power, and then they hit it to DK. And they did. The 80-yard touchdown wasn't the only one they did with that. They hit him on quite a few of those quick drops, and they worked. So they did kind of do what you said. I think they have to continue to enforce that. But I'm going to say that I think they might need to do it more because of Denzel Ward. They might. There's the lack of doubt that I have that he'll be covering DK, and so you might not get as many looks. Do it to the tight ends. I will say that you were at the press conference on Tuesday, and I don't know how you didn't fall out of the chair when Mike started opening up about how you have to use power against 4-3 teams, and you can't ask a 250-pound tight end to block a 4-3 end. And I'm like, look, Mike, I mean, we've all been following this sport for a long time. Every team in the league has been asking that to an extent.
That's
but for the most part,
an alleged reason why TJ Watt's sacks production is down.
Yeah, I mean, but for the most part, you're not asking the tight end to block Myles Garrett.
Well, he also comped Pat Freiermuth to Connor Hayward size-wise. That's really when I almost fell out of my chair.
But you're not asking them to do that. We can see. You're asking your tackles to block those guys. You're asking Pat Freiermuth to block a linebacker who comes off the edge. And actually, he's done fairly well at that, just not as good as Darnell Washington and Spencer Anderson. So you saw a specific weakness in the Vikings and to mitigate their specific strengths, and you took great advantage of it. Cool. But we know that if you're telling us that you're going to basically you're using the semaphore codes and the Morse codes and all that, and telling the Browns that you're going to go jumbo again, then you're not going to do that much. You might still do it situationally, but that's not what the package is going to be this week. You're going to see Jonnu. You're going to see Pat. All the consternation of the last 2 weeks that we've heard about, gee, what's wrong with Pat? Well, what was wrong was they played a power setup instead, and he's not the power tight end, and it worked. So that's all that's wrong with Pat. Can they get better at connecting between he and Aaron? Sure. But all that's wrong so far is he dropped a big ball. That's one. And he didn't play a bunch against the Vikings because of jumbo. That's two. I'm not promising you he's going to break out this Sunday, but I'm going to tell you that I fully believe that they will try to either break out him or Jonnu or both.
My defensive key is bat balls down at the line of scrimmage. They're good at it. The Steelers are. Watt's good at it. Hayward's good at it. From what we've seen in games with Harmon and what we saw at camp and in practice in the preseason with Y.A. Black, he's good at it too. So Dylan Gabriel's 5'11". I know what Mike Tomlin said about his quote-unquote superpower being processing. Well, the kryptonite to that superpower should be batting balls back in his face because he's 5'11". If I was Dylan Gabriel and I could choose a superpower, it would be to grow. I've been trying to find that superpower my whole life too, Dylan. I'm parking my car in the same garage here on this. But now I will say this. I do think that Terrell Austin made a good point yesterday, and some of the other defensive players said the same thing. If you're 5'11" and you led your team to a Big Ten championship and you're a starting quarterback in the NFL, you've probably got some sort of proficiency of avoiding that problem. Now, the Vikings got a couple in his first start, so let's see if the Steelers can do the same thing. And the Steelers aren't just good at, the Shaquille O'Neal rejection into the 37th row. They're good at getting their hands up at the right time to deflect the ball and have it flutter into the hands of a waiting defensive back. That's where some big plays could happen.
Yeah, and just to complement that as well, the edge rush often forces that. Even if and this is why I think that early in the season, the criticism of TJ Watt not getting sacks was overblown, because the pressure does create a reaction to that. And the reaction can often be to step up toward where the big guys are to block your passes. So they need to continue to get that great pressure from the edges and make sure that they seal a pocket so that he's always trying to pass where he struggles to see. I 100% agree with you. The only place I would tweak it is they're not good at that. I mean, they are really special at this. This is something that Cam has been elite at his entire career, and I think we're seeing from Harmon and some others that they can be good at it as well. So absolutely, that's something I 100% agree with you on that. And so, mine was just to pressure Dylan. He is not a typical rookie. I mean, he's probably the most experienced NFL rookie quarterback to ever enter the league. Unless you count like Otto Graham back when they merged. In terms of coming out of college, I mean, he played 64 college games. By comparison, Anthony Richardson started very early in his rookie year, if not the opening game for the Colts. He had played 13 college games as a starter. Even Kenny Pickett only got, the Kenny Pickett, who was extremely experienced, only got to 50. That's how crazy experienced Dylan Gabriel is coming out of college. So you can't expect him to be to be overwhelmed by the occasion, by the idea of being in a game against an NFL team. He's played so much football. It really just comes down to you have to be better than he is, not more experienced, just better. And all the things you said and what I talked about with keeping that pocket closed, those are the things that will make it difficult for him.
My bonus key, I'll be quick here because this isn't so much a criticism as much as it is an observation, because I think it's a matter of circumstance. The Caleb Johnson miscue notwithstanding against the Seattle Seahawks. 24.7 yards per kick return for the Steelers. That's 12th out of 16 teams in the AFC. Only 2 punt returns all year. If they get a return opportunity, do something with it, is my point. Because you don't get a lot of them, it appears, and you're not doing much with them when you do get the opportunity. And like we just talked about, they've got to go 9, 10, 11, 12 plays every time they score because they don't get chunk plays. Get a 10-yard chunk on a return and make it one less 1st and 10 down and distance sequence that you have to worry about on offense. Like, get a first down on special teams before you give it to the offense is what I'm saying. Just do something with the limited return opportunities that you have.
Yeah, the first thing I would say to that is that the kickoff return game, I'm not sure that they take the right approach to that. I don't think using the running back in the new modern kickoff rules is working for them. It hasn't worked. It didn't work last year, and it's not working this year. I think they need to consider a different approach to that. I think that you're not getting hit as hard as you would have back in the day when guys were flying down with 60-yard head starts. So I don't understand the reluctance to use a receiver type or a DB type who would be more dynamic than a running back in that circumstance. That part I don't get. And then from the punt return part, the reason they've only returned 2 punts all year is because they couldn't get off the field on third down. And so they need to do better at that. They need to get more punt returns, whatever they do with them. They got to get off the field on third down more frequently. I think they did that against the Vikings in large part, but they have to do that more. My bonus key, it's been a fairly quiet month since the 60-yarder for Chris Boswell, which is mostly good because they've been getting to the red zone. When they have been getting to the red zone, they've been converting. They're one of the highest teams in the league in red zone conversion, but I kind of have a feeling that this is going to be a big Boz game. Maybe not Atlanta 2024 or Baltimore home 2024, 6 field goals
Kansas
to win
City
it
in the
with
playoffs.
But I think you're going to see him be an important player in this game.
Before we move on, I do want to encourage people again, get your comments, get your questions, get your thoughts in before Browns and Steelers. Next week, speaking of keys, we'll be giving you the keys to the win or the loss because we're doing a post-game show, basically. We'll still be Friday morning, same time, 9 o'clock. It'll be your first chance to listen, react, respond to what happened the night before for Steelers-Bengals. So just as a heads up, a reminder, we will be here. It'll be a normal show. We're not doing a pregame show. But we're doing basically a postgame show because that game will end somewhere around 11:30 or whenever that game ended last night. And just in time for Philadelphia to see the pitcher throw the ball over the catcher's head. My favorite part about that play, Mike, not to harp on this for our friends from Philadelphia, but my favorite part of that is the catcher being completely flummoxed that the ball was coming his way in the first place because he's taken his mask off, dropped it down, and just pointed like, you're going there, right? You're going there, right? You're going there. Oh, my God, the ball's over here. Like, he wasn't ready for the throw because he was looking at the first baseman.
As far as I could see, because I watched it on my phone, I was coming back from Chicago, but as far as I could see, there was never going to be a play at home, even if the throw had been on target. So why he thought he had time to do that? You got to make the play to first. Just because it's a shorter throw doesn't mean it's the better throw.
But anyway, we'll have moments like this where we can second guess and say, how did they do that? Why did they do that? For an hour right after the Bengals game next week here on the Friday Football Show. Same time, same place. It'll just be a different format because we'll be wrapping up the game instead of previewing the game. So that should be fun. I don't like Thursday night games for a lot of reasons, but for this show, I think it's going to be great purposes. We'll do it 9 a.m. on Friday of next week, brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. All right, on the other sideline, that's where we go next. The Browns matchup. This is usually what we do whenever we talk about the opponent, who the Steelers are going to play. We find a little angle, a player, something, a nugget from the other team to talk about for a little bit. And I'm going to look at the run game. There's a lot of matchups here that I think are really interesting. There's some fun numbers to chew on here because there's some areas where the Browns and Steelers are right here. They're 2 peas in a pod, and then there's a gulf. And we've talked about some of the gulf already. Like, for instance, the run defense. You pointed out they only allow 76 yards per game on the ground, the Browns do. Steelers only run 80 yards. Browns allow the fewest yards passing per game to running backs. Jalen Warren is this team's second leading receiver. The Steelers are 8th in red zone offense at 69%. For as good as Cleveland's defense is, they're dead last in red zone defense at 76% allowed, which is weird, but it's probably because so few teams get to the red zone against them. The Browns and the Steelers are 3rd in sack rate. And, second and third in sack rate. Browns are second. Steelers are third, 8.8 and 8.7. So they're 2 of the better pass rushing teams in football, and they both have offensive tackle problems. The Steelers average only 4.9 yards per play, 25th in the NFL. Cleveland is one of the few teams that's worse than them at 4.3. So, there's a lot of areas, Mike, that I think creates meat on the bone here. Like, which team is going to do what they do better? Which team's holes are going to be exploited worse because they can't fix them even against a team that's no good at doing the same thing. So, it's kind of funny to me how this game could crack out in that regard.
I like that, and especially in some of those circumstances. I think the Steelers' rushing average is a bit skewed in the sense that they played 3 games where they couldn't run the ball and 1 game where the opposition couldn't stop them. So are they getting better? Some of it was schematic because of the jumbo package. But if they do that, if they decided that the jumbo could work against Cleveland, then it might work. And then all of a sudden their rushing statistics from the previous 3 games aren't really germane. So what are the Steelers going into that game? I think that's what we'll find out, because as you mentioned, that pass rush, the Browns, you mentioned before, they're wounded, and a lot of people look at the record, but this is an unbelievable defense. I mean, they beat the Packers, they hung with the Vikings. The only team that smoked them were the Ravens. They were right there with Joe Burrow they had Joe Burrow. They had both the wide receivers, and I think they scored 17 points to win 17-16, if I remember from week 1. And so this is not a joke team. The Browns have had a lot of joke teams, and we've all seen them over the course of the last 25 years or so. But this is not one of them. This is a team that's compromised at the most important position, and maybe they've addressed that. And they've got other issues, but the defense has been spectacular, and the Steelers have to find a way to cope with all of the challenges that defense presents. I don't expect this to be an easy game for the Steelers at all. And so that reasoning comes from what we've seen from the Browns as a defense through 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
I'll be quite honest with you. I would have picked the Browns if this game was in Cleveland. But they're coming back from Europe. They're playing in Pittsburgh, where they've got the 1 win, playoff win. It is funny, though, how we rationalize away that playoff win with this regular season stat about what the Steelers are against. Yeah. Oh, it's been since 2003. They lost a playoff game. Yeah. It's like we think that because there were no witnesses in the stands, it didn't count. But, I was there. I saw it. I saw Marquise Pouncey snap that ball over Ben's head. I remember. I was there. I was talking to Andrew Siciliano, who used to do the Red Zone. He was my college roommate. He does college classmate. He does play-by-play for the Browns. We were joking about that, how even some people in Cleveland go, there's nobody in the stands. They can never win when there's people there. It's got nothing to do with the people. It's a playoff game, for God's sakes. But all right, so let's get to our stat pack here, because I gave you a bunch of stats just now and how they match up. I am going to get a little bit more in depth into the pass rush element and the offensive tackles for Cleveland when we get to the couple other matchup segments that we have down the way. But for the stat pack, I'm going to go big, league wide on this, because I love this number. All right. I had to throw this out there for our stat pack. If you look at the standings and you see 3 first place teams, the Bucs, Steelers, and 49ers, their combined point differential for 3 first place teams is 9. The Steelers are in first place, the -2 point differential. And then those other teams combined to 11. So that's 9 between 3 division leaders. That shows you the parity that we're talking about. And, check out some of the teams that are currently in first place, like the Colts, the Jags, 4-1 teams. The Niners were so banged up. How are they 4-1? There's some stuff that just doesn't compute. And that's because the parity is what it is. And I think that goes back to your point, Mike, that what could be happening through 5 weeks is not at all an indication of what's going to be happening in week 13, because all of this can turn in a second.
So now if I'm the Rams, I'm wondering, the 49ers, why am I catching strays in this conversation? Because if the Steelers are -2, I know the Bucs are only +3 because I did some research on people talking about Baker Mayfield as a MVP candidate. That means the 49ers must be +8. So they're like, we're 3 times as good as those guys. Why are you talking about us?
They've only allowed 98 points so far. They've scored only 106. But yeah, you're right. It does look phenomenal compared to everybody else. But where are the Bills? The Bills are +40. The Colts are +74. That doesn't make any sense at all. But then granted, this is a skewy stat because Houston's 2-3 and they're +47 because they beat up on a bad Ravens team. They got the Ravens at the wrong time. But Mike, that's part of it. It's part of why I opened the show the way I did. There's some truth to that adage about in the NFL, it's not who you play, but it's oftentimes when you play them. And
Yes.
you get the Ravens now. It's a lot better than getting the Ravens when Lamar's back. That's for sure.
Exactly.
What's yours? What's your stat pack?
My stat is 14-4, which is Mike Tomlin's career record coming off the bye week. 14-4. So doesn't guarantee a victory any more than the win streak against the Browns at home guarantees a victory, but it certainly shows that they are using their bye weeks well, and that when you look at this team, what I've talked about on the show from the time we started was it's about how much better do you get and how are you able to address the weaknesses. And sometimes there are weaknesses that you can only address through personnel changes. But for the Steelers, the advantage they have is that there are weaknesses that they can address. And it's the biggest one, it's the most glaring one, and that's been the offensive line. They have what is essentially a rookie offensive line. I mean, they're not all rookies. Actually, technically, none of them is a rookie. But you've never had this line together in this formation with these guys in these positions. Faltanu played half a game a year ago. Broderick Jones entered the year having, I think, played essentially none at left tackle. You've got Mason McCormick on the right guard, who's a second-year guy, and I think he became a starter about halfway through last year. Zach Frazier's been a starter basically from the go. So there's just, and as a group, they are completely new. So where do you go from here? That's the whole thing for the Steelers. And this is a great challenge for them to show how much progress they've made over the course of the first month and a half of the season, plus training camp. How much progress have they made, and how much did the bye week help in that improvement? They absolutely have to be better if they're going to deal with Myles Garrett and company. They have to be better. They don't have to dominate these guys. The likelihood that they're going to dominate these guys is very small, but they have to fight them to an even battle to an extent. And if they can do that, then the Steelers can manufacture winning plays, but they can't be dominated. And we saw the Steelers at times early in this year be dominated by opposing defensive lines that weren't nearly as good as this one.
Time now for Who Will Take Flight. That's where we promote Flight Night at Mike's from Monday Night Football. Got 2 games for Flight Night on Monday after the Steelers game. Hey, go there 2 nights in a row, 2 days in a row. Why not? Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Flight Night every Monday. Get yourself a flight of pumpkin beers, of Oktoberfest beers. It's a great lineup that they got right now on draft and in the coolers. I was there last week. Always enjoyed going to Mike's. You should as well. We find a player or players that we think will take flight against the opponent, one from each team. I'm not going to overthink this for the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett, no sacks the last 2 weeks. That'll end this week. He's going up against Broderick Jones in a lot of cases, or Troy Fautanu. They'll move him around. Everybody's trying to pump up Broderick for this one. It's weird. Dan Moore oddly occasionally had good games against Myles.
He did.
Like Myles' numbers here are not good. Myles' numbers in Cleveland against the Steelers are really good. So it's something about being here. We'll see how it looks when he's against Broderick Jones for the most part, but I'm going to go with Myles Garrett as my Brown player. I'm going to go with Nick Herbig for the Steelers. And it's not just because Herbig might get more runway, more snaps, even with Alex Highsmith back, or at least compared to when Alex Highsmith was last in the lineup, because of how well Herbig has played since. If he's on the Steelers' right side of the defense, mainly. Now, the Steelers might juggle with this a little bit more. I don't know. But maybe you see TJ Watt go over to the right side a little bit more often. Dylan Gabriel is a left-handed quarterback. So maybe they see a little opportunity there for TJ to wreak more havoc and get away from Conklin, who's an established NFL player on the right side of the line. The left tackle position is a problem for the Browns insofar as Cam Robinson was acquired. He's a journeyman. The Steelers have had their way with him once or twice before in various uniforms. He played a series after being acquired, and there was a healthy scratch in week 4, went over to Europe, played 1 series to kind of get acclimated, committed 2 penalties and 5 snaps. But he didn't allow any pressures or sacks. That's better than KT Levinson, who is the normal starter, who had 5 penalties combined with Robinson. That means he had 3 penalties last week. He allowed 5 pressures and a sack. I think he's allowed 3 sacks and like 11 pressures. since he's been the starting guy. So that is a matchup that I think Herbig can definitely exploit. Highsmith should exploit it, so maybe you can make it him. Or if Watt's going to play on that side, you can make it him. I just think this should be a chance for the Steelers. You can't chip and double everybody, right? And if you do, then blitz the inside guys and get in Gabriel's space like you said before.
Exactly. So let me ask you this, since we're on the subject. So now that you've established what Herbig can be, and now that Alex Highsmith is back healthy, how would you rotate? How would you use that extra depth piece? Would you try to bring the snaps down for Highsmith and Watt so that they're fresher late in the game as well as late in the season? Or do you use Herbig on passing downs? I've heard that suggested because he's a phenomenal pass rusher and maybe certainly has made improvements on the run, but is not Highsmith. So what would you do?
I'll draw the college basketball analogy here, Mike. I make him my sixth man who gets more minutes than some of the starters.
Right.
You know, maybe not more than Watt, but Watt seems to need to come out of the game to keep himself fresh.
Yes.
Later. So I would rather have myself saying, where's TJ in the first quarter than I have in recent years saying, where's TJ in the fourth quarter?
Right.
Where there seems to be, you got to stop, but he had been out there for 7 plays and they couldn't get him off the field early in the drive, which makes it all the easier for the offense to then score later in the drive because he's not out there. So I'd like to see him have some oxygen left, have some gas in the tank because you used Herbig on the left side while Highsmith stayed in there on the right side. And you know what? If it's a close game, if it's a tight game, if it's a game where you're only up by a score, I want Herbig out there late in the game because I want the pure pass rush guy out there to get the quarterback who's trying to throw for first downs.
Yeah, we saw against the Vikings what that could do on that the decisive series, the clinching series for the Steelers, where he forced the grounding penalty with the great pass rush. I do think that there is value in getting the snaps down, especially now for Watt and Highsmith. And if you take 30% off of each of them, and that's 60 for Herbig, or 25 and 20, whatever it might be, whatever you think the proper math is. I think that getting their snaps down now will make them better in the fourth quarter or late in drives when you want them on the field, as well as in December. TJ's not had as great Decembers the last couple of years as he's had Septembers. And we know that you want to see that better. So I think they've got a pleasant problem, as they say, first-class problem. And I think that will help them. For me, the player to take flight is Pat Freiermuth. I mentioned before that I don't think that the jumbo thing is going to be a steady diet in this game, because I don't think even with an extra offensive lineman that you're going to effectively run block to shred this Cleveland defense in the way that you were able to against Minnesota. I think you'll see it situationally still because it worked, and there will be circumstances where you want to run the ball. Maybe if you have a late lead, for instance, and you want to do the whole Jerome thing at the end of a game. But I don't think that's going to be the primary approach offensively. And I think they're going to do their tight ends more. And I think it often happens with Steelers when people start to harp on something. Those players find a way to deliver and shut it all up. And so I think Muth. I think you're going to hear a lot of Muth chants.
Well, I think it's largely because, Mike, when we harp on these things, we're right. I mean, like, the numbers don't lie.
No, but you have to put them in the
they
context.
hear it. Tomlin pretends he doesn't hear it. He hears it. The players hear it. And they know it, too, because they're looking at the same numbers we are. It's not like they're sitting around the Steelers offices and saying, hey, we paid Pat Freiermuth. I'm sure glad we did and never throw him the friggin' football. I'm sure they're doing some of this analysis themselves, and they want to get him involved too. So it's not just we'll show the media or we'll show the fans.
Right.
They're thinking the same thing. We got to get this guy the football.
But in the Minnesota game, the reason he didn't play was 100% schematic, and because they didn't play Jonnu either, and no one's really complained about Jonnu's first 2-3 weeks. They didn't play them.
But where I'm complaining about it, Mike, is that the collective of the tight ends with the absence of a number 2 wide receiver, that collective group was supposed to be the number 2 wide receiver, and it's not close. It's not.
Well, I
commensurate.
understand that, but what I'm saying is that in Dublin against Minnesota, it was schematic. They were going jumbo, and they very rarely threw to the tight end because they were able to get DK on those short routes. I still believe that one way to unlock the potential of this offense is to throw short passes to the tight ends. And yeah, it's hard to do that all the way down the field, but if you continue to do it, Jonnu's going to break some. If you continue to do it to Freiermuth, they're going to have to ease up the coverage a little bit on DK, and then you're going to hit him. So I do believe you need to soften up the middle of the field with more than just quick passes to DK Metcalf that he can take to the house. I think you're going to continue. You have to continue to soften up the middle of the field on those quick throws, and I do think that Muth is going to be a primary target on Sunday.
Who's your Browns guy? Because I like this.
Yeah, Malik Collins. Malik Collins came over from the 49ers as a free agent. The first couple of games made almost no impact. My first, when I looked at his numbers for the first 2 games of the season, I'm like, okay, was he hurt? Was he getting snaps? But no, he was on the roster. He just wasn't playing very much. They put him out 3 games ago. He's got 3.5 sacks already. He's got a couple of quarterback hits and 12 tackles. He was fantastic in the Vikings game. I think he's somebody that you absolutely have to be concerned about. Lining up next to Garrett when you're paying all that attention to Garrett. You've got to be worried about Malik Collins as well. He's shown he can get through the middle and get to the quarterback, especially when you're overemphasizing the blocking of Myles Garrett. If you don't keep an eye on Malik Collins as well, you could have some problems.
Yeah, you and I were right on the same page in this one. In fact, that's where I was going to go until I saw you do that one. So I just decided to go with Myles and not overcomplicate it, not overthink it. But I think that's a really good call. Let's go around the league, Mike, while we can before we get some comments and make our predictions. I'll kind of do a continuation of what I did before with my point differential stat for those 3 division leaders. What the more global picture that I was going for here is it's very hard to lick your finger, stick it up in the wind, and see where the playoff breezes are blowing, because I think a lot has to be written in just about every division. If you got a team that has a -2 point differential leading the North, and the Niners, as banged up as they are, leading the West, and the Bucks, I think I really like the Bucks. I thought the Bucks might be an NFC championship team, championship game team at the very least, win a playoff game, maybe go on the road to Philadelphia or Detroit or something like that to play an NFC title. That's my opinion of the Bucks, but they've been living on borrowed time. It feels like they've had some good fortune in close games. You can't win all those close games. So it's not restricted to those teams, though. Like, there are no unbeaten teams in the league left, and it's only week 5. And if you look at the other division leaders, the Eagles are now 4-2 with the 30th ranked offense in the NFL. Buffalo is 4-1 with the 5th worst rush defense in the NFL, and they're going up against Atlanta this week. Here's a good number. Since 1992, I heard this from Jerry Dulac, my colleague on the Steelers radio network and on Fox Sports Pittsburgh 970. Since 1992, this is the first time 4 weeks in or later that the Steelers have led their division and everyone else has been below 500. How about that? That's going back to Cowher's first year in the Central, not the North, the Central. And I'll give you one more here. Jacksonville and Indy, right? They're co-leaders in the South. They're both 4-1. Both teams had win totals at over under 7.5 to start the year. So, like, some of this stuff still has to shake out. Like, a lot of this is going to come back to the middle. Like, you look at the Vegas odds boards, Mike, at the start of the week, and I don't know if they've changed during the course of the week, but I mentioned it in the Trib earlier in the week. Like, Baltimore still is at -110 in some places to win the division. The Steelers aren't even favored to win the division yet. People still think Baltimore's going to come back and rally. At least the odds makers do.
And that's what I've been trying to stress from the start of the show, really, is that you have to keep your head down and take care of the games that are challenging in different ways over the next, now it's going to be the next 5-6 days. The next 6 days that they'll play both of those games. And they have to take those challenges they'll be challenging for different reasons. In the case of the Browns, we've talked about the defense. In the case of the Bengals, it's having to go there on Thursday night and what their history is. And Flacco, maybe, it's a different look now. It's not Browning throwing the ball to the defense all the time. Maybe Flacco actually hits Jamar Chase with a pass. That'll be new for them for the first time since Burrow went down. So I think absolutely those games are challenging, and you have to focus on what the challenges are and not, hey, wow, look at our record. We're in great shape. The fans can feel better about it, but I think the fans have to remember as well how badly they felt after 2 of their first 3 wins. So there's so much work to be done for this team, so much left to be figured out. But I think they're capable of figuring it out. If I didn't think they could figure it out, then I'd be telling you that I'd be putting my money on the Ravens on their favorite odds. So one more thing I'd like to say is that Barry Foster is very upset that you cruised through that 92 stat without mentioning him. He's like, hey, if you're going to bring me up on the fumble of the kick return.
Oh, no, hold on for a second. Because I actually praised Barry for that. I actually used Caleb Johnson as sort of a way to leverage in praise for Barry. I said, look at what happened to Barry after he screwed that up in 90. 2 years later, he ended up leading the AFC in rushing. I always used to say he led the NFL in rushing. That was wrong. I think Emmett actually led the NFL in rushing that year, running behind that Cowboys offensive line. But 1,690 yards.
Yes.
And then he went to the Pro Bowl again 2 years later when it was the Bam and Barry combination. And then that really took wing in 95.
Right.
It was Leroy Thompson in between. You remember that? Because Barry got hurt. He rolled his ankle in 93.
Yes.
And Leroy Thompson was sort of the Kenneth Gainwell, the Welde Moore of the day. And he had a couple big games, just like those guys, where he popped in the basic handoff, run the ball department. I remember him carving up the Bills one night on a Monday Night Football game or something. We could go somewhere with this. And they scratched in the playoffs that year in between.
Yes.
And then lost in Kansas City on that
Joe
goofy
Montana
call. The bad special teams call in Montana beat him. That's right. What about you? I want to talk about Flacco a little bit.
Yeah, someday when we have time, I will tell you my Joe Montana story. It's a great one. I think the Flacco thing is amazing. One of the great tweets I saw this week was in the future, everybody will have Joe Flacco for 15 minutes. Andy Warhol. I thought that was brilliant. He's
Flacco moment of fame.
We've got to get Flacco in a Steelers uniform as the third quarterback at some point, just to complete the lap. I think.
Yeah, he's going to come back. Yeah, exactly. He's going to come back and practice in the indoor facility, but actually maybe he's a guy who has a chance to play or something like that.
Or maybe do like a flurry with him, where you have a practice, and then in an exhibition game he starts. And bring him back home, because
he's only 41. That's plenty of time for college football eligibility. Now, I covered Duquesne guys who are at least 50. I mean, that's plenty of time nowadays with the rules that you have.
It's easy to forget that Flacco has his Pittsburgh connection.
Right.
I mean, he was a Pitt guy. So
Yes.
Bring him home when he's done with whatever happens in Cincinnati. Bring him home next summer. Let him go to training camp. Let him play an exhibition game, and then retire.
The
as a
Joe Flacco
Steeler.
one-day contract is just that's rattling in my brain. I love that idea so much.
Perfect symmetry. And let's not forget, Joe Flacco was a participant in what I believe to be the greatest Steelers game of all time. They won 6 Super Bowls, and they played great in some of them. But the best football game the Steelers ever played in was the AFC Championship game, the 2008 season, January 2009. Best football game I've ever seen the Steelers play in terms of memorable moments, riveting circumstances. And he was out there. Now, he was the victim, but his participation in that game should be honored.
I love the banner down at the bottom here that Chris just put together. Hey, Mike Tomczak can come back and retire for one game as a Steeler. They can do the same thing with Flacco as a former Pitt Panther.
Absolutely.
I think it fits.
So the other thing that I was going to mention was, I hope you saw this on Twitter. If you haven't seen it, look it up. Chris Jones on the game-winning TD crawl, I call it, by Trevor Lawrence on Monday Night Football. It is just like I used the meme from Phoebe and Friends. Oh my eyes! She saw something she couldn't believe. Chris Jones starts out in the middle of the line, and Trevor Lawrence drops back to pass, falls down, and Chris Jones never moves. He doesn't move toward Lawrence while he's on his tail. He doesn't move toward Lawrence when he's stumbling to try to get to his feet. He doesn't move toward Lawrence when Lawrence finally does get to his feet and starts sprinting toward the left edge. He never moves. He's considered to be one of the great defensive players in all of football, and he seemed to have no concern whatsoever for how that play went. Now, if the Chiefs were up 40-7 or whatever, okay, I can live with Chris Jones taking a play off in that circumstance. But this was the game. There were 20 seconds left when Lawrence crossed the goal line, so it was over for the Chiefs. And there was no effort made. I've never seen that isolated before from a great NFL player. Just inexplicable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think he did apologize for it, but it's way too late for that. It's sort of like the Juan Thornhill play that everybody hangs over his head in Cleveland for when they started calling him Jog Thornhill for that play. But let's get some comments here, Mike, because we got a couple minutes here before we get to our predictions. I want to go to Bobby first. Bobby says Cleveland at home is a more difficult win than on the road at Cincinnati. Cleveland's D is nasty, and we're going to have our hands full trying to protect Rodgers. There's a lot of that I agree with. I still think the Steelers are going to win. I want to see what the Flacco thing looks like in Cincinnati before I draw a conclusion there. But Thursday night, road division, that's just a bad fit for the Steelers. Cleveland coming here after being in Europe with Dylan Gabriel making his first true road start in Pittsburgh. I'm not going to give you my score yet, but I am going to take the Steelers. And I get leery of these Thursday night divisional road games. They spook me.
I do like the respect for the Browns that's evident in his comment, though.
No, I agree with that part of it. I mean,
yeah, this is not a typical 1-4 team. I think Cleveland fans should be highly disappointed. I mean, it all goes back to the ridiculous Deshaun Watson deal. Someday we could talk about this. Like, is that the worst deal that's ever been made in NFL history? We still laugh about the Herschel Walker trade years later. 40 years later, 30 years later. I think this was a worse deal than the Herschel Walker trade. I
agree with that.
To trade a bunch of stuff for him, a bunch of assets, and then to give him a crippling contract, not be surprised necessarily by anything other than the injuries, but like you knew when you made the deal, everything that was at risk for him competitively because of what had happened in Houston. And you still made that deal. I do believe that's the worst deal that's ever been made in NFL history. They're paying for that as a result. The quarterback conundrum continues because of that terrible decision. And then they came into this year. They had 4 quarterbacks when they started, 2 of them draft picks, and they anointed Flacco the starter and maybe underestimated their own defense in doing so. Flacco is a heck of a backup at this stage in his career. Steelers fans saw it in the Colts game, but I don't think he should ever have been designated as the week 1 QB.
And they worked so hard to get away from Baker in the first place, who's going to be a Pro Bowler and an MVP candidate this year.
Yes.
That's the other side of this.
Yes.
The Walker thing comes up because the Cowboys did so well with what they did. Oftentimes you talk about, that's a horrible trade. Babe Ruth, because the Yankees went on and won 40 World Series or whatever. And the Red Sox, it wasn't just about the Red Sox not winning one between 2004 and 1918. It was because the Yankees did so well. But it's not like the Texans took off like a rocket ship after the Deshaun Watson thing, but that's their own fault.
Right.
So I tend to agree with what happened to the team because of the deal. Yes, especially when you got the money involved that we're talking about. Chris, I'm going to do these next 2 comments back to back because they dovetail with the last one, and we'll just put them together. Joe says, I call this type of game, meaning the Cleveland game, a Tomlin special. They'll definitely lose. Again, Joe, I'll reiterate what I said about an hour ago to start the show. I would have 100% agreed with that if that was on the road. In fact, I would have taken the Browns in this game if it was on the road. Jay Preacher, 66. The Steelers will lose to the Bengals. They are not going 2-0 against these teams. They will drop one and would not be surprised if they drop both. The Steelers have never won a Thursday night game against a division opponent. There you go. I didn't know that was the exact stat, but if that's the case, then does he mean I've never won? Drop both. Maybe on the road. It might be the Steelers never won on the road against a divisional opponent. But anyway, They're hard. They're hard to do, especially when you play against division. The one thing about it is at least you know the opposition. In this case, they know the quarterback. I don't know if they know the quarterback throwing to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. That's going to be the interesting thing. And you know this, Mike. You've still got a lot of connections in Cincinnati. Like, do they want to expose Flacco behind that offensive line, waiting for those two to get down the field to take those deep shots, though? That's the question.
Right. You know, I will say that the first comment about Tomlin's special, it's a canard. If you look at his record against teams that finish with losing records, it's actually better than most in the league. It's actually an exceptional record, and because of the memories.
It's when they do it, though, Mike. 2023 Browns last year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those games stick in your mind because they sting. Because there's often an assumption that they shouldn't lose. That's one of the reasons why I look at the conversations that have been had around town about them being. If they don't win now, it's a failure. Hey, I walked out of Acrisure early November on what was and what I continue to describe as maybe the most perfect football day that I've ever existed in against the Ravens last year. And then if I remember correctly, it was 4 days later, they had to go to Cleveland and play in the snow. And the snow itself changed everything. So when you think about it, you remember those games like that Browns game and like the two games, the Arizona game and the New England game, and those ones, the Oakland game against Terrell Pryor and all that, they stick in your minds. But what you forget is they usually take care of such games. Over time, they've won the vast majority of games against teams that aren't successful. But it's also a mistake to look at a team's short-term record and assume they won't be successful in the end. I don't think that Dillon Gabriel is going to lead the Browns to the division championship. But as we've talked and reiterated on this show for now nearly an hour, they are a significant defense. They are not just good. They've been very good the last several years. Maybe on occasion, they've touched greatness, but they have reached greatness at the start of this season. And so you can't just assume anything going in against them.
One more from Charles, and we'll get to our predictions. He says the other direction, 5-1 in the Thursday night, 10-day off bye. Then Aaron Rodgers returns to Green Bay. Actually, the Green Bay game is here. That's a Sunday night game. But, yeah, after that, the schedule does get tougher because they've got Green Bay followed by, who is it exactly again? The Colts and Chargers. And the Colts game is also a home game. The Chargers game is a Sunday night game on the road in LA. But, boy, that Chargers game suddenly doesn't quite look as daunting as it did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, again, and it again speaks to why they have to continue to improve. That's what this is about. What they were in week one if you played that same game, that same performance for 17 weeks, they'd probably end up 7-10. That's every break going their way in every game. But you have to improve. And they did improve by the week 3 against the Patriots. They weren't great, especially in terms of their third down defense, but they did some things better in that game for a lot of that game. Early, they were good offensively. Late, they were not. Defensively, they created opportunities. They took advantage of. Week 4, they play the Vikings, and they are a complete team. The strategy was perfect. The execution was perfect, except for the one play, the long near touchdown pass to Jordan Addison. That was a significant mistake. But the rest of that game was a really outstanding NFL performance. So I think you have to look at it. They're getting better. Now, that can't stop. They have to be better against the Browns than they were against the Vikings. And there will be times over the course of the next 12, 13 weeks where they take a step back. It's inevitable. But they have to continue the ascent. If they don't ascend, what we're talking about in terms of their current divisional positioning won't matter.
All right, Mike, let's get our predictions before we get out of here. And I'm going to go 21-16. Steelers win. And we always give some sort of player prop, too. I don't have a specific one on the board, but I'm going to make you a guarantee here. in honor of my dearly departed friend Dale Lawley when we did our 3 guarantees for the pregame show each and every week. One of my guarantees this week will be a tight end. I don't know which one, but a tight end will go over 30 yards. It's only happened one time so far. I think it was Freiermuth in week 2, but a tight end will go over 30 yards. One of them. I don't know which one. Steelers 21-16 is the final score. What about you?
Yeah, I have the Steelers at 21-10. I might go a little lower in terms of their point output. I think I've sort of factored in the 21, the defense contributing to at least one score, whether it's a pick six or a fumble return, or whether they just get it deep in territory and then you just have to convert from the red zone or whatever. But I believe the defense, if it gets to 21-10, it will include that. I wouldn't be surprised by 17-10. I think that still covers. I'm saying that if you're looking at the number, I'm saying that I expect them to cover. The player prop for me is Boz. And why I did this, I said 21-10. I was going to say, I
saw this. I was like, well, how do you have
these are
going?
Contradictory now. I just realized this. The number's bad because
you want to make it 22. You want to make it 20. You want to make it 19.
Let's make it 24 to 13, say, because then they don't work. They don't add up. I think Boz is going to kick. I think he's going to be over 1.5 field goals. The line on him that I found was 1.5. I think that he'll do more. I think he'll do at least 2 field goals in this game. I think they'll find a time when it's hard to get to the red zone against this Cleveland defense, but they'll be in field goal range and he'll boot a couple through. So I don't know. My numbers are off, but the point was that when I was coming up with the number I thought that it would be a cover, but I still think it's going to be a very difficult game. There will be lots of moments in the game that are no fun, kind of like the Patriots game in a different direction. But I do think that in the end, the Steelers will win and that Boz will have a significant role in that.
Should say Mike's new prediction there. Mike's new prediction. Reminder, we will be here, usual time. Don't have to do anything different yourselves. We will be different because we'll ostensibly be doing a post-game show. It'll be a couple hours after the game ends. It'll be 9 a.m. Everybody will be waking up, bleary-eyed after staying up watching the game, or maybe you're at work. You haven't had a chance to get any reaction. Give any reaction. Give it here. We will have it the Friday football show the morning after a Thursday night game between the Bengals and the Steelers. Watch it here, courtesy of Mike's. Go there before the game on Sunday. Be there for the 2 Monday night games. It's another one of these double header Monday night deals that they do. I don't know why they do it, but it's great for Mike's. Go there. Bills and Atlanta, which should be interesting. Let's see what Bijan does against that defense. Washington and Chicago is the other game. So Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Meet me at Mike's and see us Friday after Bengals Steelers here on the Friday Football Show with Mike DeCourcy and Tim Benz.